Dear students, in the last session, we know meaning of collection of data and the types of collection of data. This session we discuss the sources of primary data as well as the sources of secondary data and some of the merits and demerits of sources of primary data as well as the secondary data. The learning objectives of this session are to understand the concept of sources of data and to understand the advantages and disadvantages of sources of data. Session outcomes are like this: theoretical understandings of sources of data, and students are also know the merits and demerits of sources of data. The sources of data are broadly classified into two categories, namely the first one is the sources of primary data, second one is the sources of secondary data. Let us to know in brief the sources of primary data. Primary sources give first-hand information that is original and unfiltered. There are four types of primary data sources. The types of primary data sources are detailed in study in the next session. Examples of primary data sources are eyewitness accounts, personal journals, interviews, surveys, experiments, historical documents, and artifacts. These sources have a close and direct connection to their subjects. Then next go to the merits of primary data sources. First one is it is original and fresh. Next, the researcher can be sure of the reliability of the data. Then next one, degree of accuracy is quite high. Fourth one is it does not require extra caution. Another merit is it is depict the data in detail. Then the primary data sources is also not free from the demerits. The demerits are like this: collection of data requires a lot of time. It requires a lot of finance also. It requires a lot of labor, and it also requires a lot of skill also. And in some inquiries, it is not possible to collect primary data. Then we learn in brief the sources of secondary data. The secondary sources of data can be obtained internal sources as well as the external sources. Data are collected from reports and records of organization itself, that is internally, is called as internal sources. For example, total sales, loans, etc. Data are collected from outside the organization. It is known as external sources. For example, a tour and travel company obtained the information on Karnataka tourism from Karnataka Transport Company. The secondary data sources merits are like this: use of secondary data is very convenient, then it saves time and finance. In some inquiries, primary data cannot be collected. Under this situation, secondary data sources is very helpful. Reliable secondary data are generally available for many investigation. Secondary data sources is also some demerits also. It is very difficult to find accuracy of the secondary data. Second one is it is very difficult to find secondary data which exactly fulfills the needs of present investigation. Extra caution is required to use secondary data. And last one is these are not available for all types of inquiries. Thank you. Then we will meet in the next session.